Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cantina Social Hour. Hope everybody is having a great week, a great weekend. Happy Friday. We're finally there. And I'm really excited to be here this evening talking to you guys. One of the highlights of my week, of course, every week is Cantina Social Hour. How could it not be? Looking through our friends here in the chat with us so far, I see a lot of our usual Cantina denizens hanging out with us tonight. So really good to see you guys. Thanks, everybody who's joining in. I just want to go through the list really quick and see who's with us. Paul, how is it going? Paul, I feel like you're first every single time. I don't know how you do it, but good on you. Good on you. Justin, how's it going? Good to see you, Justin. Glad you're with us once again. Britt, how are you doing? I feel like I haven't seen you in a couple of weeks, but it's nice that you're here now. Peak Obi-Wan, how are you doing? Good to see you tonight. Jason, my friend, how are you doing, Jason? Good to have you on with us tonight. Very cool, very cool. Good little crowd that is forming in here. Awesome. I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, cool. And I love seeing the conversation that's going on up until we get started with our chat. That's really cool. Tim, how's it going? Good to see you, Tim. Glad that you were able to hang out with us this evening. All right. So you guys know it. Cantina Social Hour. A lot of the time we have the same, guests that you guys are familiar with, that we run the podcast with, that we feature on Social Hour or whatever it is. But a lot of times we have different people on because, how boring would it be if we just had the same people over and over and over and over. So, one of my favorite things is to welcome on new folks onto the show, to have new conversations, and to introduce you guys to people that you might already follow or you might not already follow. And this evening I'm super excited because I have somebody on the show that I've been wanting to have on the show for a bit now. I've been following for a long time, and we're really, really excited to have Mr. Rick Shew. Rick, how's it going?
Hello, Victoria. How are you?
I am well. I am a fan. Thank you for being here with us tonight.
That's crazy. That's like crazy talk. That's very flattering. It's great to be here. And I'll tell your audience that there is a storm in the Houston area where I'm at, and my neighborhood's terrible with internet, but we're going to be okay. If I put it in the universe, that means we're going to be fine. If I don't say anything, it'll go out. So there's my good mojo. All right.
Well, we'll send positive vibes that it maintains.
That's right.
And yeah, we'll do our best. If there's any problems, we all understand. Things happen. I'm actually from Texas. I know what you're talking about.
Where? Where are you from?
From the RGV.
Where?
The Valley.
Oh, you're in the Valley. Like McAllen, down by McAllen and everything?
Arlington, to be more specific.
Yeah.
That's where I grew up.
I know that area well. I used to know that area well. That's great. Cool.
Yeah. Now I'm in San Diego. I've been in SoCal for 15 years. But yeah. So I, from one Texan to another. Howdy.
Cheers. It's funny. I lived in the Los Angeles area once upon a time. But where you're from, and I'm a Dallas-Fort Worth boy. I'm a Dallas boy, really. Dallas, Texas, and McAllen, Texas are almost like two different countries, culturally, everything. I love it down there. It's great. It's really great. Now I haven't been there in 20-something years, but I always have loved it. So do you ever go back there?
I do, at least once a year.
Cool.
All my family is still in Texas. I got a lot of friends there, so I do make it back at least once a year.
Nice. Do you have friends I'm in Houston now, here, Dallas, Austin, any of the major
they're
cities?
all over the state. Yeah, I have family in Dallas. Yeah, I have family all over the place there.
Nice.
Yeah, everywhere. Austin, San Antonio.
Cool.
Yeah, I lived in San Antonio as well for a few years.
It's a great town.
Yeah, it is. And I do miss the Tex-Mex and the barbecue and the Whataburger, the Bluebell ice cream, all of that I miss sometimes, or all the time, honestly.
Yeah, Bluebell is almost in some ways more of a staple in the sense that everybody now has sort of heard of Whataburger. It's on memes, it's in GIFs and whatnot. But Bluebell is still sort of like this Texas, what is that? What is Bluebell, right? Which is cool. Still has its mystique, I guess.
Bluebell ice cream, so good. I wish I could get Bluebell here, but I cannot.
Yeah.
I cannot get Bluebell in SoCal, unfortunately.
That's so funny. Love it.
Yeah. So very cool. Very cool. So Rick, tell us a little bit about what you do through your podcast or your history with Batman and why I have you on to talk about The Flash this evening.
I have no idea why you have me on, but Why do you have me on? So here's basically the short version of the story in terms of to characterize how we got here today. I have just been a super fan of, like, if you can see that Batman and Robin right there, and that Yoda puppet right there, there he is, there he is. I've had those three things in my room when I was a kid. So the Batman stuff comes off that's Adam West and Burt Ward essentially. And then that Yoda puppet I got that shortly after Empire Strikes Back came out, actually. And so I've just been a super fan my whole life. And what's crazy is that as I've gotten older, I've grown more in love with these characters in pop culture, largely when you're talking about Batman, because when you're introduced to Batman through the Adam West TV show in the 60s, Scooby-Doo, things like that, at the age I was at the time, it's that Batman. And then you get a little older and you start discovering the comics. And then in the 80s, you had Frank Miller. And then you had Tim Burton's 89 Batman that came out. All of a sudden you're going, oh my gosh, the characters are growing with me in a sense, or I'm growing with them, or however in my head I thought about it. And then I get all the way to something like the Dark Knight, and I'm a grown adult, and it's this masterpiece crime drama Batman film. And so that's the best way I can phrase it, is I've just been a super fan my whole life. When I was with Batman on film for, gosh, I don't even know, 8-9 years. And I think that's where you were introduced to us, and, me doing all the shows there. And in my last couple of years at BOF, I launched what I called the Satellite Show. And the Satellite Show is essentially just non-Batman topics. And what's interesting is I would pepper them in, at Batman on Film. I would do an episode on Star Wars or whatever. And so many of the fans and listeners of that site and that podcast would go, man, why are you guys doing, it's Batman, why are you guys doing a podcast on if it was DC, it was fine, but if it was the Rocky franchise or Cheers TV show or, anything non-DC, it was like, why the heck are you doing that? And it was one of those things for me. I was like, hey, listen, Burger King has chicken sandwiches. All right. Like, branch out. But when I launched the Satellite Show, then it gave me carte blanche where I could do really virtually any topic I wanted to, which led to Friends from Work. So Friends from Work, my new podcast, is essentially the Batman on Film Satellite Show. The only difference is the Batman on Film Satellite Show is under that umbrella, and and Bill Jet Ramey runs that, and it's great. I just kind of have freedom to do what I want, when I want, with who I want, kind of thing. But that's the birth of it. That's where it came from. And essentially myself and Courtney Cheek and Brian Chatlin, two really good friends of mine that we met as actors, friends from work. Our whole thing is we just talk about whatever the heck we want to talk about, right? Any pop culture, anything, just let's roll. And so that's basically what it is. And obviously there's a lot of focus right now on DC, Star Wars, during Disney Plus stuff, and Mandalorian and Obi-Wan, etc. But and I really hope we don't branch out too far from that, at least for me, because those are my two favorite things on the planet in terms of pop culture, is Batman and Star Wars. But because there's so much great content and so many crazy things going on that we just have this endless, what a great time to be a fan, right?
Yeah, I know.
So there you go.
And it doesn't matter what you're a fan of. Like, this is the time to be just a fan of anything. And maybe Harry Potter's on a lot of that right now, but everything else, basically, there's plenty of it to go around.
That's right.
Yeah. So no, that's really cool. Batman on Film, great site. I started following Batman on Film during the production of The Dark Knight, like back when, it was the very early pictures of Heath Ledger as the Joker. And I remember being on the forum, 2011, around that time frame, 2012, when The Dark Knight Rises came out. Our wedding photographer, my husband and I, actually, we met him on the Batman on Film forum.
Did you really?
Yeah, we did.
You and your husband met on the Batman on Film forum?
No, we didn't meet. We met I met our wedding photographer.
Got it. Yeah. Still, that's great.
Yeah. So, and we're still friends with him and all. So.
I love it. It's such a crazy little subculture within a subculture within a subculture. And, to give those guys a lot of props, they deserve it. 25 years strong. They're rocking and rolling. Yeah, that's cool. Listen, I will always cherish my time there, and I've met friends for, I have for a lifetime because of that show. And the show gave me a way to be able to do what I'm doing now. Without it, I mean, that's really what got me into podcasting was that show or that site. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. You talked a little bit about your history with Batman. So I grabbed it before we went live, but I'm going to show because I may have shown it before. I don't know if anybody here in the audience remembers, but this was my very, 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 very first ever Batman action. I'm going to go spotlight myself here to make it a little larger. But this guy right here, Toy Biz Batman.
That looks like a Michael Keaton Batman. Yeah,
it is.
And looking at his rib cage and everything, that looks like it's from '89.
Yeah, it's from the Toy Biz line. So Toy Biz had the license before Kenner got it for a very short time, but they were not able to keep up with production of, with demand for Batman toys. So then Warner Brothers took the license from Toy Biz and gave it to Kenner. And then Kenner took over with the Dark Knight collection. And this was right before that happened. So this is one of the Toy Biz figures. He even has his original Batarang right there.
I think I had that at one point. I really do.
Yeah. I think he had the grapnel gun, but I don't know what happened to that. This cape is actually not the original cape. I was such a tomboy as a kid. My grandma, I used to play with these. My grandmother knew that I was always losing the cape. So she would actually buy fabric and then cut them. So she actually made this cape as a replacement when I was a kid.
Is that your grandma down in the valley?
Yeah. But he still got his belt.
I had that. I absolutely. Yeah. So I used to have this fishnet, right? Very 80s. And behind it were multiple posters of Batman 89 with Nicholson and Keaton, etc. And then on the fishnet, I had a bunch of different kinds of toys like that were, and I sort of got to have that. I pulled that thing and had it tied and had them in, doing their thing. And then I had this shelf above it with comics, and God, I can see it in my head. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Some of that stuff was stolen and got lost. Oh. Thank God I still have quite a bit of it, but I had that thing and it was hanging on a fishnet in my room. I swear, as soon as you did that, I was like, yep, I had it.
Yeah, I'm happy it survived after all this time.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I remember the day that I got this. My dad bought it for me. There was a little video rental place called Video Stop in my hometown, and it was, I don't know why they sold toys, I guess, apparently, but my dad took me one day after I'd seen the movie and I saw it. And I'm like, oh, I gotta have that. That's cool.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
I love when we can keep stuff like this. Just like these guys I pointed at earlier. I've had those things since I was 4 years old. And I've lost the most random things over the years, but somehow I've always had those guys. It's cool. It's cool that you have that. I love it.
Yeah, for sure. Batman 89, that was probably one of the first 3 movies I saw in the theater. And I remember I was little when I saw it in the theater, and I was terrified when Joker shook, that one guy's hand and turned him into a skeleton. I just couldn't look. I was terrified at that. But other than that, I loved the movie. It was just so fascinating to me.
Antoine got a little hot under the collar. 34 years ago today, by the way. Today it came out in the theaters today, and 34 years ago, that means it was 34 years ago. Back in those days, there were no midnight screenings or fan screenings or whatever, and it was press screenings. Obviously, it was just New York Times and maybe Dallas Morning News where I lived or whatever. There was no fan press. It's a different world. It's a different world 34 years later.
Totally different place.
It's so crazy. But Michael Keaton's on the big screen right now.
Yes, I know. It's amazing. It's a dream come true.
No one's going to see it, but he's there and he's great. I
know. It's sad. I've seen it twice. I've done my part.
I've seen it twice. I only paid for it once, but I've seen it twice.
Nice. Yeah.
I snuck in the first time. I'm kidding.
Well, we'll talk about the film in just a little bit. I want to look here in the comments because I guess I'm not the only one that has that. There's people in here saying
that's so cool.
July through November. I mailed away for that Toy Biz figure. I didn't know they had a mail away promotion, so that's really cool.
Is that something recent that they did? July?
I think for the one that I just showed, so it would have been 34 years ago. But I didn't know that they had a
I see what they're saying. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
reading a lot into one sentence, but I get it now. Yeah, cool.
And fun fact about this figure is they released it with like 3 or 4 different head sculpts. And so when you look on eBay, like it's always a different head. Like you don't know what's on it until you see the photos.
I love that it has the wide eyes. What a great debate that is for cinematic live action Batman.
Yeah. I found the figure in a drugstore before my mailway arrived. Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. Yeah, super cool. And Jason says he's in the Houston area too, and that it's humid out right now.
What's up?
Yeah.
Hope there's no storms. I'm in Cyprus, buddy. We're getting storms here, but anyway.
Britt says that right off the bat, the Flash toys are all Batman. Yeah, a lot of them are. A lot of them are.
I have something to say about that, but I'll wait.
Well, let's talk about that because I haven't really. I do intend to get most all of a huge part of what I do here on the Cantina is collect toys. I'm a lifelong toy collector of all kinds, mostly Star Wars, mostly Jurassic Park, and largely Batman. And I haven't bought a whole lot of them yet. I will eventually, but there are some really neat toys. I mean, I wouldn't by any stretch of the imagination say these compare to the quality that Kenner used to do back in the late 80s, early 90s, but they're not bad. It is nice to have like Michael Keaton Batman figures like in 2023 on the shelf. Like that is pretty darn awesome.
Right.
And there are several figures. There is a whole wave of figures you can get, but you can also buy those same figures by buying various multi-packs. You can get the Batwing with a couple of the figures. You can get the Batmobile with a couple of the figures. There's multiple ways to get them, and that's kind of cool. I love having those extra options for buying these figures. So it is really nice to see them on the shelf. Spin Master's doing a pretty nice job making them available.
Nice. Just you saying that out loud too, just thinking about the fact that there's Michael Keaton stuff available in 2023. Just say it out loud again, right? In your head, just it's incredible. It's incredible. And I'm trying not to pepper it in with like some negative ramifications because it's also heartbreaking in some ways. But I'm just trying to still just enjoy the ride.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what it's all about at the end of the day. I'm going to share a photo here of Wave 1 of the basic figure line. Now, I have seen these in stores. These are at, your Walmart, your Target, even like places like grocery stores are carrying them. So this is the whole Wave 1. If you were to go to the store and you wanted a single carded figure, this is what would be available. So there's Batman, there's the Flash, there is Dark Flash, Supergirl, and then the Flash in the Batman Returns spray painted suit. So there's some nice options out there if you just wanted to go and buy them single packaged. And they're not bad. I think they're like $8. So I mean, it's not terrible. With what things cost today, when you think about like Star Wars collecting, especially like $8 isn't so bad for a basic 4-inch action figure.
Was it Batman Returns suit? That 18-year-old Barry?
I think it was Returns.
I think you're right. I didn't even think about that. I'm seeing it in my head now. Even when he was cutting the ears off the cow and yeah. I think you're right. That's crazy.
I will tell you for sure because I actually have one of the sets right here. This is the one that comes with the Batmobile. And I can go ahead and spotlight this. And okay, so there is Batman, there is Flash, and yeah, it is the return suit based on his abdomen. It is definitely the returns suit. And that's kind of dark.
Yep. But no, it's very distinctive and very specific. That 89 to return suit is they are not the same.
They are not the same.
They are not the same.
And this is neat because it does have the classic Batmobile in it.
So great. That's still the coolest Batmobile. I mean, let's face it.
I love how the hatch like slides forward too. Like it doesn't like in the old days it would like lift up, but like now it actually like slides like in the movie.
Yeah, it's great. My second favorite live action Batmobile I think might still be Affleck's, and the reason why is because I love the Tumbler and the context of the Nolan films. I mean, it's perfect. but as a Batmobile, it's it's an army tank. I
Yeah.
like the Affleck Batmobile we get in BVS because it's sort of a hybrid of like the Nolan Tumbler and the Tim Burton.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, I even think the Batman and Robin Batmobile is pretty slick. I don't like
Mhm.
Val Kilmer's car with the fins and everything on it, but yeah. So I look at Affleck's as sort of like the Tumbler, George Clooney's, and Keaton's Batmobile, but for whatever that's worth. But yeah, that's great. We never saw it again in live action. It wasn't in The Flash. It's in Batgirl. Whether or not we ever see it again remains to be seen, but it was still cool to at least see it, just not in action.
Mhm. Right.
I
Yeah.
remember seeing this on the news when I was a kid. That's a great line, by the way.
I know. I
Yeah,
know. It
yeah.
is.
Because I could just see him as a kid running around going, "Is that Batman guy again? Look at that. That's cool." Sorry, I'm jumping around.
It is the best Batmobile. I don't care what anybody says.
It
And
is.
I mean, they're all great, to be honest. I love all of
Sure.
them. I really do. But
You love Val Kilmer's?
I do.
Good for you.
I do.
I'm
Like
glad. I'm
all of
glad
them.
you did. I'm glad you
I
did.
would drive. Let me put this. I would, if somebody gave me a Batmobile and they didn't say which one I was getting, I would be 100% happy with any of them, and I would drive it happily.
Joe Schumacher opened up sort of a psychological can of worms of that Batman because George Clooney had no space for Robin in that thing at all. None, zero. Like, dude, you're on your bike. Leave me alone.
He didn't even have a roof. He was comfortable just driving around,
This is why Superman works alone.
Exactly.
It's
And the
true.
credit card and everything. Oh my god.
I made a joke the other day online. Andy DiGenova, Holy Batcast, great Batman podcast, by the way. It's been around a long time. Somebody posted or commented on a tweet that he put and had the never leave home, never leave the cave without it or whatever. I said, the funny thing is that moment to me is funny. I'll Get Drive Through wasn't funny to me because that was like a film that was supposed to still trying to act like it was a sequel to the Burton films, where Batman and Robin was at least unapologetically just goofy. And
Right.
so there's something about that you have to kind of admire. It was like unapologetically what it was,
Right.
and you have to admire that, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah. But yeah, no, I love this car. Like it just like cemented into my head, as a kid, just seeing that like on even like the toy commercials on TV. I never had. Okay, so I did have the Toy Biz version, which I don't know if you know this, Rick, or not, but it was a convertible. The one that Toy Biz did of this car was a convertible for whatever reason. And then when Kenner got the license, they made it like that.
So you could see Batman.
Yeah, and it had a windshield on it too. And I think it was a 2-seater. It had a huge trunk, so you could put all your Bat accessories in there. And yeah, so I know I got that like secondhand when I was a kid at some point, but yeah, and I love that car. It's amazing, and it's just perfect. Like I can't think of any way you can, like I love what they've done with all the subsequent Batmobiles, but there's just like no. Yeah, I mean it's perfect. You can't like improve on it. It's just like everything else has its value that they've done, but nothing has touched the original car.
No, and nor should it. Right? It's like, don't try. It's one of the things I admire about Matt Reeves' car, and we'll see what he does with the sequel. But that's just a garage gear. Bruce Wayne just kind of threw that thing together.
I know, I love it too.
Oh, it's great. It's so great. But you just can't. You can't make the Batmobile like that. And again, my second favorite Batmobile live action is Snyder's, to be fair. So there you go. But it's
a good one.
It's a good one. It's a good hybrid. It's a good hybrid.
I feel that you made a good point. Like it's kind of a combination of like the Keaton Batmobile and the Tumbler. And I feel like if the Dark Knight trilogy had continued on, like I think that's what he would have ended up with at some point.
Yeah, he probably would have. But I'm glad it didn't, personally.
Right.
And what a great scene where he finds it, looks at Lucius and says, "Does it come in black?"
Yeah.
And that's just it. That was not to jump around here, but if I may just say this, that's the brilliance of the Nolan trilogy to me, is in pictures and even in trailers. Well, maybe not trailers, but certainly in pictures when you're seeing everything, like nothing made sense. The suit, the aesthetic, the car, like what is he driving, a tank? I think I literally said that when I saw the first still. And then you see it in the context of that movie or the movies, and you're going, Nolan's Bat trilogy to me was a great exercise of like, don't judge until you see it. Don't judge that Heath Ledger's the Joker. Don't judge that weird new suit that you're seeing for The Dark Knight. Don't, because it's in context, right? It's all about, it correlates with what's going on in the script and the grounded reality. And it was a good lesson. And really, quite frankly, talking about Keaton, we should have all learned that lesson 35 years ago, right? When it was announced that he was going to play like Mr. Mom's going to be Batman. It's terrible. Like, and then he's, if not the greatest, at least certainly one of the greatest. So,
right.
Yeah,
for sure. Very well said. And there's some comments here too about.
Did you imagine Twitter back in 1988? Like hashtag.
Oh man.
Not my Batman. Mr. Mom's not Batman.
Man. Yeah.
That'd been trending every day. Mr. Mom's not Batman.
I know. It would have been crazy. It would have been crazy. Justin says the 89 car was totally built around the jet engine and done with class. Mary says that the 66 Batmobile is the most iconic, my favorite, because I got to sit in it. That is awesome.
That's actually very fair. We didn't even mention that car, and it's awesome.
That's a great car too. I have all of them in some form or another. So
touche, Mary.
Jason says it's the car. Chicks dig the car. Yeah, I wonder if the Batman and Robin Batmobile didn't have a seat for Robin because of the shenanigans he pulled in Batman Forever. And he was like, you don't get to sit in the car.
Maybe. It was very interesting. He had a car upgrade. He literally left him out.
Yeah.
And when you think about that in the line, this is why Superman works alone. Like, there's something really symbolic I've never really even thought about until talking to you. It's kind of funny.
Nice. So other than this, the one thing I'll mention is there is the Bat plane as well, the Batwing, and there's two ways to get it. You can either get it with Batman and Flash, I think, but you can also get it in a 3-pack. Like it has the Batwing, but it also, and this is only on Amazon, I believe, and it also includes Supergirl in the set. And then Amazon also has like a big pack with all the figures in it except for Dark Flash. So there's multiple ways to get all these figures. If you didn't want vehicles, you could just get that. If you wanted just to pick and choose, well, you can do that with the main basic figure line. If you want a vehicle, you can get a vehicle. So I love that Spin Master gave us options because those are always great to have when you're a collector.
Awesome. Very cool.
Only other company I think that's doing these is McFarlane. Anybody that's watching knows I have a lot of issues with that company. But yeah, they're making a lot of this stuff too. And Hot Toys has their own stuff, which I have the Keaton on pre-order, the modern Batsuit as they're calling it. But that won't be out until next year probably. So I'll get to wait for that.
Awesome.
Speaking of have the returns Hot Toys right here. It's one of my favorite in the collection. Just love it. All right, so let's talk about the Flash. So I didn't mention this in the comments earlier, so this is going to be spoilerific. If you haven't seen the film, or you don't want to hear spoilers, and you can come back to this later. It will be published, so you can come back and listen. But yeah, so let's talk about the Flash because the DC extended universe has been really hit and miss for a lot of people, for a lot of fans. And there's been some great stuff. There's been some not so great stuff. There's been drama behind the scenes. There's been changes of, who's in charge, changes of, who's directing the films, lots of changes to the films themselves. But now we're at this point where the movie is released. We've seen it, and we can talk about the good aspects, the, maybe the not so good aspects, things we loved, and things that, we can only postulate on for the future of the DC film universe. So I guess we can start with just our general overall feeling about the film. And I know, Rick, you've talked about this previously on previous episodes of your show. But what is just your general feeling about The Flash?
So the first time I saw it, I liked it, but I really did not like how Keaton was handled. I felt he was introduced, did these things, died. And I couldn't get past it. And part of the problem with my viewing of that is something that I try to preach to fellow fans and friends. Like, sometimes we get so wrapped up in the behind the scenes. And the Star Wars sequel trilogy is a great example of this. That when we know decisions that have been made by the studio for different reasons, and so things shift or change or whatever, that we know that. And so when we're watching this work of art, we're going, oh, they only did that because of the fan backlash here. Oh, they're only doing that because of this happened up here. Well, they're doing this because James Gunn's taken over. That would have happened. The original thing was this, and they shot the last scene. And it's like, and I did it. I fell for it. And so as a result of that, it was maddening to me as a diehard Michael Keaton Batman fan. When I watched it the second time, I told myself, don't. This is a 2.5 hour work of pop art. Watch it as what it is. The finished product is what it is. It's, a movie isn't one person's vision. Unless you're Steven Spielberg, you're not, or maybe Tarantino, right? You it's a collaborative thing. No director is just in charge of their movie. It's an editor's medium. It's a director's medium. It's a writer's medium. It's kind of everything. And it's also the studios get in the middle of stuff. So we got to remember that, right? And so how the sausage is made can sometimes ruin things for us. And I let it happen to me. I didn't let it ruin it, but I certainly let it make me a little jaded. Second viewing, I loved it. Loved it. I thought it was a film with a lot of heart. And I mentioned this in a Twitter thread that I made. If you're one of the 3 people that read it, is that I'm 48 years old. Both my parents are still alive, but they are aging. I have kids, and nothing I would not do for my biological ones or my step. Doesn't matter. They're all the same to me. If you're a mother, dad, son, daughter, gosh, some of the stuff in this movie is as touching as anything I've ever seen in a comic book film. That last scene in the grocery store where he watches himself put the can of tomatoes in, and he has to take it out because she has to die. She has to, for the sake of the universe. There's no way around it. I find that's such an underrated premise, and I think it's such an underrated performance. It is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And the stuff with Keaton, fantastic. I have to tell myself that's not technically the exact same Batman from Batman and Batman Returns. It's an alternative version of that Batman in another universe, because that's how I justify that he's dead. But I also know that he wasn't going to be dead because he was at the end of that movie. He was also in Batgirl, and they were going to continue with him in DCU. It doesn't matter. That's not the movie, right? And so when I was able to let that go, I thought, what a beautiful performance. What a great last line. You already saved me, or however he phrased it. And of course, the Clooney cameo. I mean, come on. How fun was that? And what a sport. How self-deprecating that guy's been over the years for him to do that. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful comic book movie. And I think it's tragic that people aren't going to see it. So there you go.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you hit on some really good points, and I totally agree. I found that with, I mean, I don't want to say just DC films, because there's been Marvel films too, but like any film really, like there's films that you really like, and films that, they just don't hit all the right spots for you. But I feel like for the most part, like this one really did. I tried to go into it just, you hear all this stuff as the movie's being produced and everything, but then you just try and you go in, you want to be entertained, you want to enjoy a good movie. So you just try and filter all that out. But from start to finish, I felt like I was immersed in this movie. Like I was really looking at every detail and just analyzing, as I was watching it. The first time it's all new to you. So it's you're just processing everything, but it felt fresh to me. It felt like you were talking about the heart that the film has. That was not something that I've really seen in a DC film. I don't feel like, since maybe Man of Steel, or Wonder Woman had some of it too.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
it it was very prevalent. And, it does make me sad as well. There's a lot of folks that I've heard that, they're not seeing it for X, Y, or Z reason. Because, I think they're missing out on a really good time. And I think there's no substitute for seeing a film like this in the theater. It's great to see it when it comes on home video or streaming or whatever, but to get to see it like in Dolby or an IMAX or whatever, like that's, or just in the theater, just a regular plain old, movie theater, like there's no substitute for that. So, I loved it. I really did. Just sharing like my general overall feelings of it. Like, yeah, Keaton was amazing. Like it's just incredible how like after all this time he just like snapped right back into that role. Even like especially when he was just like Bruce Wayne, right? Like he still had the mannerisms. Like I rewatched Batman '89 the other day, and just like just the way like he moves, like he doesn't always make eye contact with who he's talking with, like all that was there. Like he just like went right back into like nothing had changed. Like he had been that character all along, and that just made me really happy. Like how much it just like how awesome it was to have him back, because that was a few years ago. Like I just never would have imagined we would have gotten that. So like having him back was amazing.
And the character was around for decades before Keaton played him, and technically he's the fourth actor to play him, right? There were two different actors that did the serial Batmans, right? Yeah, for what? Yeah, so those are a trip. I mean, I've watched them, I've seen them, but I'm not, they're more just part of the history of it, so it's interesting.
Yeah.
So he was the fourth actor to play him, but the thing about him is that, and he was the actor that brought Batman to a modern audience in treating him with respect and dignity and as a serious character. And because of him, if that didn't work, we wouldn't have had the Nolan trilogy. We wouldn't have had Matt Reeves. Batman Returns had its own issues. I'm not particularly crazy about that movie myself, but I know it has its fans, and I respect that. That's great. And I still love him in it, and I still love Michelle Pfeiffer in it, and I love Danny DeVito, but I don't love Danny DeVito in this movie. But that's fine. But that movie, the backlash from that was what led us to Joel Schumacher, right? And then Batman and Robin led us to Chris Nolan. So, it's kind of an interesting thing. But at the end of the day, none of this would be here. The original film that really set the stage that comic movies could work is Richard Donner's Superman, hands down. That had to work. That's really, truly the grandfather of all of it. But Batman '89 was the film that did the same thing for Batman that really Frank Miller kind of did for comics, is that it introduced us to this very serious, intense Batman, but to the entire world. And it changed the character mainstream forever. And that's something that people that aren't from that generation don't understand or don't grasp. It's okay. They're not necessarily supposed to, unless you're just a Batman historian, but it's very true. So like his contribution to the character is unmatched. And for him to roll back in and just play, just like you said, his mannerisms and everything, that is because he knows it. I think he gave that great speech when he was, what was that college he was at years ago? But it was like 2018 or 17 or something. I think it's a commencement speech, but he leans in and says, and by the way, just one more thing, I'm Batman. And this was like post Nolan. He knows it. Yeah. God, he's great.
Yeah.
His contribution is just unmatched. But anyway.
Yeah. No, he still is, I would say, if I had to pick one, and I love basically all of them with to varying levels, but like I still feel like Keaton's my favorite overall Batman. I know I've said that before, but like it's just, and I think a lot of that, I'll admit, is nostalgia, because he was really my first like exposure to Batman. Like I was really little, but I saw that in the theater. I saw Returns in the theater, and I loved both of them. And then I feel like Val Kilmer was, it changed obviously when after Keaton, to different varying levels of greatness or not so greatness, but so a lot of it is nostalgia for me, but a lot of it is just like he just feels very natural. Like he incorporates like the awkwardness. If you were that person who was secretly going out every night and beating people up and fighting crime, like you would be a little bit, unique.
Weird.
And I feel like
Yeah.
he encapsulates that sort of awkwardness, like in his interactions with others. And but then when he's Batman, like all that goes away, and he's just I'm really drawn to like him as Batman. So again, just to have him back and to see him, interacting in this world that's been established over the last 10 years, was really neat. And it wasn't necessary, probably not, but I don't care if this is our only way to get him back and see him for a little bit in that role again. Like, it was, for me, it was totally worth it.
Did you see some of the stills that were released recently from Batgirl? It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
I did.
It's like, can I just see those scenes? And I feel like somehow maybe we will. I hope, and maybe we'll see him back. I don't think the box office of this film is going to affect whether or not we would see him back in a Black Label project. Either way, because I think it has its issues way beyond him, and he's not an issue. But one of the things I'd like to say, because you talked about a moment ago, to see this film as it's intended in Dolby or IMAX or whatever, and I agree with you. What I would say though is, for me, the most beautiful parts of this movie have nothing to do with the action or CGI, which, by the way, is perfectly fine. And I'll die on that hill. But but it's the scenes with Barry and his parents, his dad, his mom, and it's also the scenes with Bruce. And when Bruce is talking to, and to give Affleck a lot of credit, I'm talking about both Bruces. When that talk that Affleck has as Bruce with Barry, like, you can go back and, yeah, I've turned from zero to hero, whatever, but I'm also alone. The correlation, the parallels to that conversation to a conversation that Keaton has with Barry in the Batcave in the Flash, and he basically says the same thing, that, I don't even know who I am with the death of my parents. Another beautiful understated moment. But to your point, it just was him rolling right back into that. And oh my goodness, the parallels are something that I don't think is being discussed enough. That conversation with Bruce Affleck and Bruce Keaton with Barry is phenomenal. But again, just a perfect embodiment of Batman, and the most antithetical physical embodiment for him. And that's, in my opinion, what also made that work. And that's why Tim Burton wanted him. He wanted an everyman that was an unassuming, a Bruce Wayne that was 6'4" and stacked. He didn't want that. He wanted what he got. And you got to give him a lot of props for that, because, even Chris Reeve, they had him goofy and he was thinner, but he was still, I'm 6'3". Reeves was 6'4", 6'5". He was still Superman. You know what I mean? Like, he was still, whoa. He wasn't 5'9", right? Keaton's a little guy, and you believe every second of him playing Batman in all three of his movies that he's in. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot more to embodying a character than just, the physicality of it. It's the mannerisms, it's the tone, the personality, and he really captures that really well.
Absolutely. And if I may just say one last thing, is that the larger point I was trying to make there, because I oftentimes walk around the block to cross the street, so forgive me. But you had talked about seeing in the theaters, and I agree. But some of the most beautiful moment, guys, if you haven't seen it, stream it, because the most beautiful moments are the simple character-driven moments that have nothing to do with special effects. You can be on your couch and enjoy those. So there's my TED Talk.
Yeah, for sure. There was a lot of heart to the movie, and something that is to pull that off, just the balance and the fun stuff, the nostalgic stuff was I felt like it flows really well for me. Like, it's not like nonstop action. It's not nonstop, like just roll on. It's very well balanced, I felt like. There was a parallel I kind of noticed too, like you're talking about, like the early, like the Ben Affleck Bruce talking to Flash about, talking to Barry about being alone. And then when you see like Dark Flash, like later in the movie, like he basically, like, result of that, right? Like, have anybody. So
I'm losing you a little bit.
Kind of tight. Kind of cool.
You're breaking up a little bit for me. So forgive me if what you're saying I can't respond to directly. You there?
Yeah, I saw.
We're live. Doing things live. It's bold, Victoria. It's bold to do things live. Is bold. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, I'm just gonna do a quick little thing here. Are we good now?
There you are.
There we
Hey.
go. Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And I know you were saying awesome things. I was like trying to catch. It was like you would say two words and then like, oh, and I don't know if it's your end or my end. But you know what? If I can just say that for all you podcasters out there, her and I, we stream our shows live. You do this. It's hard. Live shows are hard.
Yeah, like I always say, when you're live, anything can happen. Like an alien invasion could happen, and you would see our reactions as it happens. So
that's right. That's right.
Yeah, we just do the best with it.
I'm heartbroken because you said you talked for 30 seconds and I didn't really hear it, but I'm sure you're making great points.
Yeah. No, basically what I said was, Ben Affleck, Bruce talking to Barry at the beginning about you end up alone. Eventually, like that happened when we saw Dark Flash. Like he went back and fixed things.
Lost you again. Shoot. You're there? Hello.
How's that?
You're back. Is that on my? Is this on my end or your end? Who knows?
That is a very good question. I'm not.
The good news is that I cannot believe we did not lose power.
I think